Welcome back to the Free Spirits Podcast, where we explore the cannabis beverage space and the functional products changing how we socialize. I'm your host, Lars Miller, here with my co-host, David Gonzalez. Today, we are joined by Peter Barsoom, founder of 1906 and one of the most visionary operators in the infused space. Known for launching functional, fast-acting edibles before most people had ever even heard of microdosing, Peter is now making waves with Off Duty, a hemp-derived shot designed to transform any drink into a cannabis beverage. Welcome, Peter. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Happy to talk to you both. Thank you for reaching out.
Of course.
So excited to discuss beverages.
Awesome. So your background is in finance and strategy. You worked at powerhouses like Amex, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, and the sort. Through that experience, I imagine it taught you a lot about regulated markets. And so then you set out to launch 1906. And doing the research, you mentioned that your mission behind 1906 has always been about ending prohibition. But you didn't just focus on legalization, you focused on form factor, accessibility, and intention. Why was that the right place to focus?
Well, who knows if it was the right place to focus, but it was the place that we chose, right? We chose that in part because when we keep talking about cannabis as medicine, which is the way, we've been talking about it for decades, it struck me as odd that it's not available in any medicinal format. Like a joint is not a medicinal format. A gummy is typically not a medicinal format. So we saw a big disconnect between how we have been talking and thinking about cannabis as an alternative to alcohol and pharmaceuticals. Well, if you say something's an alternative to alcohol and pharmaceuticals, what are the prominent delivery methods for alcohol, beverage, pharmaceuticals, pill? So that's, I think that was a big part of the genesis behind the innovation in form factors at 1906.
Yeah. And what made you believe low dose and in fact, fast-acting products would win out long-term?
We looked at it as if we're creating products for ourselves, as professionals, adults, like what is it that I want? And the belief that there's a lot of other people like me, my co-founder, that want that. And that's frankly where we saw the market was missing. Like when Colorado opened up 2014, we went out there a year later in January of 2015. What did we see? Number one, lots of flower, great flower options, like more so than I've ever seen in my life. Having lived in New York and being reliant upon my dealer coming over with a backpack if he had 8 strains, that would be like, whoa, that's a lot, right? And then you walk into a dispensary and you've got dozens and dozens of strains that are there. And then secondly, you had lots of candy options, high dose, very sugary gummies and chocolates, because it was speaking to a stoner market coming out of the illicit market as well. What was missing is like, I don't want to get blasted and I don't want to see purple dragons tonight. Can I have something that is not ever clear in cannabis, but something that allows me to titrate and feel the way I want to feel and be able to control my experience? So we designed 1906 for people like us. Internally, we like to joke that 1906 is cannabis for control freaks. For people who want to stay in control, want to know how it's going to make you feel, when it's going to kick in, and how long it's going to last. And that's what we saw as the big missing part of the market. And as over the last decade has shown, is there are a lot of people who are looking for control in their cannabis experience. They want pleasure. They maybe want to get a little bit high, but Purple Dragons is not in their agenda for tonight.
I love the anecdote there. So Peter, we've spoken with a handful of founders recently, and we're seeing this big shift that's basically validating the hypothesis that you're talking about. And a lot of people are basically moving product away from product that gets you high to product that you can basically engineer a mood, or the term they used was mood modulation, where cannabinoids basically just become one ingredient in this kind of functional toolbox, so to speak. How do you see the convergence of cannabis and cannabinoids with some of these functional adaptogens and nootropics, et cetera? Obviously, you have some of those in the drops you have today, but we're seeing that proliferate very heavily through beverage. And I'm wondering if you're seeing kind of two markets that are growing kind of exponentially starting to converge into one another.
Yeah, definitely. We were the first. We created the category of functional cannabis. We were the first fast-acting brand. We were the first low-dose brand. And we were the first brand to combine cannabis with other dietary supplements and plant medicines to deliver a specific effect in the cannabis market. But if you rewind the clock, this is actually the way medicine has been practiced since the beginning of time, right? It's only in the post-war pharmaceutical era that we've had this belief that a single molecule can have such that is the source of what medicine is. If you look back 100 years ago and older, the way in which people practice medicine is you had different types of herbs and tinctures, and that's what created the entourage effect or the synergy that helps you feel a certain way. And so part of this is advancements in modern technology that allow us to do the kinds of things that we're doing. But part of it is a deep understanding of the human body and how medicine has been practiced, that combinations of these different elements is what gives you the desired effect and outcome. So I love it. I think that's the way what we call sort of a multi-molecular approach to physiology and to wellness that's grounded in deep science, and recognizing that the human condition is complex. If you're feeling sad or anxious or lack of libido or low energy, yes, there are single molecules that work really well, but when combined with other molecules, they work even better. Classic example, energy, right? What the single most consumed drug in the world is caffeine. It comes in a drink, and caffeine is great, but caffeine has three major side effects. You get the jitters, you get the crash, and you have an accelerated heart rate. In our Go formulation, for instance, we pair caffeine with three other plant medicines that eliminates these negative side effects of caffeine. And so you just get a much more dialed in and a much more balanced experience of stimulation and energy.
Absolutely. I love that answer. I think a lot of times people, one of the things we see consistently for a lot of brands, not yourselves in this case, but at least in my experience in retail, it was people come in and could have the same exact product, have two wildly different experiences. And I think there is this huge need to focus on the endocannabinoid system, the physiology. How do these products work with other molecules in your body, other molecules in your food? So I'm just curious, if your background's in finance, how did you find these kind of Eastern medicine and some of these other kind of functional ingredients and start to have this hypothesis that we should be combining these two things? Where did that thought originally come from?
That thought really came from the history of how we practice medicine. It one sense it was new in the modern era, but another sense, like this is the way things have been practiced in the past. And what we did is the first thing we did is we brought on a team of scientists to help design our formulations 10 years ago. So we had a team of natural product chemists, pharmacologists, and dietary supplement experts, as well as cannabis experts, who came together and then defined what the formulations are. Tons and tons of R&D, and we're constantly doing additional research and getting feedback in order to improve our formulations and stay at the cutting edge. And that's I'll just add one other thing, like that's also the beauty of the work that we're doing, is that there is so much clinical research and data on caffeine, on L-theanine, on ashwagandha, on these other substances, often orders of magnitude more than that on cannabinoids because of the ability to actually study them.
Right. It's a huge caveat.
And many products, don't actually deliver a repeatable and measurable outcome. They toss in a minor cannabinoid, slap on an effect on the label, or marketing, I should say. You guys have always taken a different approach, as you just discussed. And what does it really take to formulate something that works? And could you kind of walk us through what that R&D process looks like?
Yeah, no, and I think because we started in Colorado, which is got a legacy cannabis market in the dispensary, like you can't fool the consumer, right? The bud tenders and the consumers, if the product doesn't deliver as expected, it won't sell. The next time, if somebody comes in, the bud tender will be like, nah, you don't want that because it won't work. So that created a really high bar that we had to meet in the dispensary market that you typically don't have to in liquor or in a supermarket or D2C. And let me share with you sort of what our approach is for creating any of our products, which is we start first with what is the consumer need? What is it people are looking for when they're looking to use cannabis? And that's why we created, our set of experiences. They use it for energy, for focus, for mood enhancement, for anxiety and relaxation, for sleep, for sex, for pain. Those are, that captures 90+% of the reasons why people use cannabis. There's another segment that we haven't really addressed directly, which is women's health, but we're getting there. Those are the major reasons why people like to use cannabis. And then we said, okay, what is the alternative for energy, for sex, for mood enhancement, for sleep, so on and so forth? What works and what doesn't work in those alternatives? And then, so we always put the consumer first. I say, okay, if you like stimulating substances or stimulating drinks because you want energy, what are the things that you want to feel? You want to feel a quick onset. For instance, right? I don't want to wait 45 minutes and then all of a sudden get like jolted with energy. And then what are the things that are undesirable about the current products that meet that? And then we map out what an ideal experience of energy, of sex, of mood enhancement is, and then identify what are the different medicines and dietary supplements that contribute to that. And then that's when we start doing the combinatoric work. Is it safe? Is it effective? How does it work? And that's how we create this entourage effect for each of our different experiences. That's been a tried and true approach, grounded in science, grounded in consumer insights and behavior.
Yeah, so you basically reverse engineered the effects and what was on the market, and then just removed the negative side effects, and then use research to do all of that.
Exactly.
Peter, I then want to parlay this into your newest flagship product, which is Off Duty.
Yep.
So Off Duty is very different from any other product you guys have done before. I imagine a very different formulation process, it's a different delivery mechanism, the physiology is different. But 1906 has officially entered the hemp beverage mania. And obviously there's been a huge surge in beverages lately in RTD, but you didn't go the traditional RTD route. You went left when others went right. So did you guys consider launching an RTD, or is it always that portable shot format that was front of mind?
Yeah. Thanks, David. Appreciate your insights there. So we've been looking at the RTD, or we've been looking at the beverage market back since 2018. Decided to kind of hold on that because it was a dispensary market, up until recently. And so, as you know, dispensaries are not the place that you want to sell beverages. You don't want to be manufacturing a canned beverage state to state. Just the economics are terrible. Doesn't make sense. We've always believed that beverages are going to be an important part of consumption. I mean, if we think about what are the three legal intoxicants: alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine. 2 out of those 3 come in a beverage. For us, it was no question that beverages belong both in our portfolio and in the consumer portfolio. And we usually like to be what I call the second mover, and not the first mover in the space that we get in. Like to learn from what other people are doing, see how consumers react. And what is it we saw? Well, number one, we saw consumers love beverages. Like it was exploding. And then others have done an amazing job transitioning from the dispensary market to the online market. I mean, the fact that people were willing to pay in order to have a 6-pack of cans shipped to them at their homes, like, wow, okay, that's unheard of or not really common at all. So that tells you something about this consumers wanted that has cannabis in it. And then we looked at, and the second thing was like the economics are just terrible. I mean, you're shipping, it's not sustainable. You're shipping water all around the country. So we don't like the sustainability, the ecological, or the economic footprint of that. And then the third is that we looked at our own behavior and that of other consumers. People don't walk around with a can in their back. And as a New Yorker, one of the opportunities or challenges is social drinking. You're out at a bar, you're out at a concert, you're going to somebody's house. So you're not going to bring a can necessarily with you to those locations. So that's the white space that we saw. We said, And then the other piece of white space is that these canned beverages, generally, they vary from tasting really bad to tasting okay. Very few of them actually taste really good, where it's like, wow, I definitely want this. So you're locked in then with the RTDs, you're locked into a product format, a can that is not portable or not very portable. You're locked into a flavor profile that you may or may not like. You're locked into a particular dosage for that volume as well. So there's a lot of limitations that we wanted to address. And Off Duty came about after many, over a year of research, because we wanted something that's portable, discreet. You can put it right in your pocket there. It is flavorless, sugarless, calorie-free, and turns any liquid into a cannabis cocktail. Here's my sparkling water.
Demo. Love it.
Here's my that. And I just squirt it in.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
3 milliliters of liquid, so very little. I don't need to stir it. Don't need anything else like that. It goes greatly in. It's cloudy, so that you can't be roofied.
Very nice.
No flavor, no sugar, no calories. Like the ultimate cocktail in your pocket.
And what's the dosage on that, Peter? On one
5
of those?
milligrams, 5 milligrams of THC, 5 milligrams of CBD. So if you're somebody who needs 10 milligrams or 20 milligrams, guess what? Just nap another, take 2. Easy enough. I don't have to drink 2 whole. And so I think, and look, the feedback from customers has been like, love this, using it everywhere. And it's taken off. And so, now the next step is we're launching the same format in our functional formulation. So we wanted to launch Off Duty first, straightforward, 5 milligrams THC, 5 milligrams CBD, like much easier to do. And then next is Go, Bliss, and Chill coming out in this same product format. So think of Go as like Red Bull vodka in a little snap.
Nice.
Got ahead of us. Those are our questions later on. I love to hear it. So a couple of things that come to mind. The first one is it takes a lot of, I think, discipline on your end to say we are intentionally not going to take a huge risk, subsidize a market, and pay for all this market education. Let's have all these other brands come out with beverages, see what works, what doesn't, get that feedback, and then go in. I know a lot of people can sit on the sidelines, get a lot of FOMO and say, I need to do this. Everyone's doing it. But it sounds very methodical that you guys chose to say, let's actually wait and see what's left after this big surge, what's not being addressed to the consumer. And so I love what you're saying about some of the challenges with RTDs. It's a water in a can and it's heavy. It's tough to ship across the country. To your point as well, flavor can be challenging. And so I guess the question that I have to follow up with this is that form factor is very unique. There's not a lot of precedent for something that you kind of snap that's a liquid that pops into a drink. There's tinctures that exist. There's stick packs, tablets, other things. How did you guys actually figure out a way to engineer a form factor? Was this something that has been years in the making, or how did you decide on a pouch that kind of splits down the middle?
Yeah. Thankfully, the technology was actually created by the folks who, do the Purell hand sanitizers. So it was really a matter of taking an existing technology out there that was used in a completely different context. And it's like, okay, well, what's the difference between a Purell hand sanitizer that comes in this and a beverage? Well, they're both liquids, both the same equipment. So what took a long time is getting the flavor and the formulation right, because 3 milliliters is like 3 little drops. I mean, that you don't have a lot of room to get the flavor and get everything right. And that's what took so long. It's a lot easier in a 16 ounce or 8 ounce can to mask the flavor of cannabis. Try and do it in like 3 little drops, and it's hard. It's hard.
So we've seen a handful of brands that started out and earned their stripes in the recreational market and then ultimately have launched in the hemp market. Is 1906 still active in regulated THC markets?
Oh yeah, and look, we love the dispensary market. I mean, there is, just to give you some metrics. Last year there was about $40 million worth of purchases at the dispensary of 1906 products. So that's a huge amount of consumer spend that's going through dispensaries on 1906. Dispensaries are great because that's where consumers discover cannabis often. That's where they can get educated. We love the dispensary market, but that's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to walk into a dispensary. Not everybody lives close to a dispensary. And so it's important for us and to meet consumers. It's important for us to meet consumers where they are. And that's why our strategy is a three-legged strategy. Dispensary markets, great direct to consumer online, the convenience factor of it, and we get to build a direct relationship with customers. And then third is liquor retail.
It's interesting you mentioned that. One of the things that I've seen retailers kind of struggle with is how do you merchandise a product like this? And a lot of times for something that's either like, the shots that are by the POS or something like a beverage enhancer, it's a bit different because it's not like a can on a shelf, which is how traditional retail is kind of built out. So how are you envisioning the off-duty format playing? How are you thinking about merchandising that within retail? Is this a POS product? Is it something that lives differently? How do you guys imagine what like a planogram would look like for how a liquor store could sell something like off-duty?
David, come join us. I have a meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. With the team and with an outside vendor to talk exactly that. How do we merchandise off duty? It's hard. I wish I could tell you, oh, yeah, we got that solved. We don't have it solved yet. It's in part because nobody knows what this is. Like if I showed you this, you're going to be like, okay, what is this? It looks like a ketchup container or something else like that. What do I do with it? How do I make it? So we need to do a lot more storytelling through visual imagery, much more than just, you know what a can is. You buy it, you open it up. That's it. Like there's not much to think about. But here we have to help the consumer along in the journey to imagine how they can use it. So that's going to take education. It's going to take videos. It's going to take influencers, things like that. So that, and then it's going to take a lot of in-store sampling. Like that's that's also the nice thing about it. It's not really interesting, like opening up a can in front of somebody and being like, here, okay, thank you very much. But as you saw, even just the ergonomics of taking this out, folding it up, opening it, it's like, wow, it has a visual appeal. And we eat and drink with our eyes. Our hope is that between POS merchandising, which you have to get right, between in-store sampling, number two, and then between education via influencers and social media as number three, that's the way we can
yeah, it's a great call. And I think one of the things that comes to mind is, as you mentioned rightly, people need to understand the context for when they would have this product. And the more that you can show them that, visualize it, make it plain and simple, here are the occasions, here's how you use it, here's how you open it and drop it in your drink, all that becomes very important. I'm curious though, is it purely just the liquor retail channel? Are you guys also exploring convenience stores and some of these other grocery channels and other places that are starting to pop up as well? Is that a different merchandising conversation, or do you think those principles still apply across all these different points of distribution?
Where the C-store market goes is still TBD. We like the liquor retail market because that's where people go for 21 and older products. There's already an infrastructure in place that we don't have to recreate between distributors and retailers. So I'm a little more hesitant about the C-store market. I think it could be really big, but it also regulatory or legally, that market may not exist for very long. We'll see, right? You're already seeing liquor wholesale and retailers and stuff wanting to push beverages through a 3-tier distribution system, which depending upon which state is in, may or may not include C-stores in terms of like beer distributors. So I would say we're playing the C-store market cautiously. And liquor retail is where I would say is number one focus. And then number two, C-store. Maybe when we craft the code on how to do visual merchandising, and then it would make sense to expand into C-store.
Absolutely.
Peter, last question for you. One thing that you guys have done better than most is naming and design with the 1906 brand. You got Love, Chill, Bliss, Off Duty as well. Even the name 1906 is a lesson in storytelling, with 1906 being the year the Pure Food and Drug Act passed. What's the approach, or what's your guys' approach to naming and brand language, and how much of that is intuitive versus data informed?
No, I mean, it's very intuitive. Data will just give you a whole bunch of different options, right?
Yeah.
To us, it's critical. Like cannabis is a confusing mess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I going to give my mom Durban poison? You know, like why should somebody be smoking something called meathead? Like the cannabis industry is terrible, absolutely terrible at naming things. Like I don't know any industry. Well, maybe tech is worse. Like what is ChatGPT '04 versus '05 or something else like that, right? But outside of tech, like the cannabis industry is probably the worst in terms of naming things that make no sense and don't have consumer appeal. So for us, like that was like we definitely don't want to do that. And people are looking for these basic things. I want energy. I want focus. Let's not make it hard for them. They really have to figure out a milligram. Already have to figure out like destigmatization, so on and so forth. And so we spend a lot of time on naming to make sure it works. And look, we've had products that we've put out there that that didn't have great names and didn't succeed, and then we've had to redo it for that. So naming is like one of the most important things and designed to get right. I mean, you got to have a great product first.
Mm-hmm.
That's our benchmark number one, but that's table stakes for us. Like we won't put anything out there that isn't a great product. And then secondly, it's got to have a name that you don't have to think too hard.
Kind of sticking in line there, what role do you think storytelling plays in trust building for the category as a whole?
It's everything. Like it really is, because we have so many stories that we have to counter, right? The just say no era. And I think without storytelling, people are bringing all their biases, assumptions, and other things to it. So we have a responsibility, as industry leaders to tell the right story and to educate people, because it's hard and because people have been misinformed and miseducated, for 100+ years.
Yeah. Peter,
Very
thank you
true.
so much for this conversation today. Thank you for sharing your insights and giving our listeners a real look into what it takes to build not just a brand, but a movement as well. And for everyone listening, you can check out 1906's edibles and their new off-duty shot over at 1906.shop, or follow along on Instagram at 1906 New Highs. And if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And until next time, guys, cheers.
Thank you.